Hey guys, welcome to StudyIQ, and in this video we will learn about Bitcoin. After the recent ransomware attack, Bitcoin has become a very important topic in current affairs and you cannot afford to ignore it. By the end of this video, you will be able to answer all these questions. What exactly is Bitcoin and why does everyone call it a cryptocurrency? What does cryptocurrency even mean? What is Bitcoin mining? Why Bitcoin prices rose by 60% over a month? Why Bitcoin was in news recently? This is quite important, by the way. What prominent economists have said about Bitcoin? All of these questions are very important. Have no fear until I'm here. We will work on each and every one of them. First of all, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to write about Bitcoin, then you can certainly write Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Now, some of you might be asking, alright, but what exactly do you mean by a cryptocurrency? I'll get to that in a few moments. Bitcoin lets people exchange money electronically, as easy as sending an email or text. To send money, you use what's called a wallet app to type the amount, enter or scan the recipient's account number and hit send. The recipient will then see the money pop up in their account. Now, how does this even happen? Let's simplify. Over here we have two people, Ramu and Shamu. Oh wait, I'm recording the English version, right? So let's call them John and Bob. If John sends Bob 5 bitcoins, then John's balance will show 5 less bitcoins and Bob's balance will show an increase of 5 bitcoins, obviously. As soon as this transaction is completed, it will start showing in a gigantic public ledger online, of course. This gigantic online public ledger is maintained by the Bitcoin network. We'll discuss that after understanding what cryptocurrency is. When John types on his wallet app 5 bitcoins, Bob's Bitcoin account number, and after that clicks the send button, then a message is sent to the Bitcoin network that a transaction has taken place between these two people, John and Bob, of course. Now, a question can be asked over here that what if a clever thief tries to send a similar message to the Bitcoin network and attempts to steal all of John's bitcoins? Can't that happen? Well, the answer is no. Bitcoin requires a kind of signature on each message to prove that it was created by the true account holder. The signature serves the same purpose as a handwritten signature on a paper check, but it's based on math rather than handwriting. The math comes from the world of cryptography, which is normally used to hide secret messages, but in Bitcoin has been repurposed to prove ownership. Each Bitcoin account number has an associated key that only the true owner knows and is used to create signature by encrypting transaction messages. Now let's understand what cryptography basically means. Cryptography in very simple words means the art of writing or solving codes. So both encryption and decryption are a part of cryptography. Now suppose I want to write a very simple word, hello. I just want to write hello. So if I want to encrypt it, I can encrypt it in any way I want. I can just write 592 hashtag, whatever my encryption technique is. Now throughout the ages, cryptography has been used various times to maintain privacy, to make sure that not everyone can read what the message wants to convey. Over here in Bitcoin, this art of cryptography is used to secure transactions. When John, well, first of all, look, each Bitcoin account has an account number and a private key. A private key is used to make transaction codes that are encrypted. So when John sends a message to the Bitcoin network that I am sending Bob so and so bitcoins, so whatever his transaction number is, it will be encrypted and then sent to the Bitcoin network so that it cannot be copied again. Alright, so this is a very good way to actually make sure that the transaction is secured. Now encryption and decryption was also very much in news recently when the ransomware WannaCry attacked a lot of computers. Now even that malware, what it was doing is it used the concept of cryptography what it did was it attacked the computer and it encrypted all the data in the computer and asked for a ransom, since it was a ransomware, to decrypt all the information. So as you can see over here, cryptography can be used for the good and for evil. If you want to use it for good, you can use it to secure your transactions. And if you want to use it for evil purposes, then of course, ransomware is a classic example. Anyway, through this very lucid explanation, now you can easily understand what is cryptocurrency, why we call Bitcoin a cryptocurrency, because it is based on cryptography. It uses cryptography to make sure that the transactions are secured and no thief or no hacker can actually copy the transaction ID and steal someone's money. Now, before discussing what mining is, what the Bitcoin ledger is, let's just discuss some of the basic features of Bitcoin. First of all, Bitcoin is a digital currency that is not tied to a bank or a government and allows users to spend money anonymously. Now, when I say it is not tied to a bank or a government, it means that it is quite different from the other currencies that people conventionally use. For example, the Indian rupee, it is tied to a bank, right? It is tied to the Reserve Bank of India. And of course, the US dollar is tied to the Federal Reserve. So Bitcoin is very much decentralized. It is not tied to any government or a bank. It is administered by the Bitcoin network. More on that later. Secondly, Bitcoin is like online version of cash. You can use it to buy products and services online. Suppose if you want to buy some computer spare parts like a hard disk or a GPU online, you can actually use your Bitcoins to purchase that online. You can buy a lot of things right now. Bitcoin has become very popular and there are a lot of websites out there that sell products for Bitcoin. So it can be used for that. But not many shops accept Bitcoin. I don't think you will find a lot of shops in India that accept Bitcoin, since it's very much new in the subcontinent. But in US, you might find one or two shops that are willing to accept Bitcoin. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, no single institution controls the Bitcoin network. Now, I'm not talking about Bitcoin as a digital currency. I'm talking about the Bitcoin network. This is a very important concept that we will discuss after discussing the Bitcoin ledger. So now let's focus on the Bitcoin ledger. Now, the beautiful thing about the Bitcoin public ledger is that it records every transaction that has ever been made using a Bitcoin. Alright, so the transaction that was made between John and Bob to all the previous transactions that have ever been made using a Bitcoin, and all the transactions that will be made as I record this video will be recorded in the Bitcoin public ledger. And when I say public, I mean public. That means anyone can just check this ledger and check all the transactions. So we can say all confirmed transactions from the start of Bitcoin's creation are stored in a gigantic public ledger. Now you might be thinking, wow, so many transactions have taken place so far. Bitcoin is a huge thing right now. So many people use Bitcoins. So how big exactly is the public ledger? Well, surprisingly, it isn't really all that big. As of late 2016, the complete ledger is about just 107 gigabytes. Now you might be sort of chuckling at this. You might say that your music folder in your PC is bigger than the entire Bitcoin public ledger. But you need to understand that every transaction has very basic information. It just has the account numbers and the number of Bitcoins that were exchanged. So you can imagine that all these transactions take very little space, yet all these transactions over the years combined in the blockchain have accumulated to a data worth 107 gigabytes. Now this will seem huge. Other than that, this complete record of transactions is kept in a blockchain, which is a sequence of records called blocks. Now, for example, this concept is quite simple. Like if I am maintaining a record of a lot of transactions, so I will use a piece of paper. So I will start writing all the transactions on the piece of paper, right? Now one paper will end and I will start using another paper, and so on. So I will end up with a chain of papers, right? Hence we call it a blockchain. So basically a blockchain is a part of the public ledger, and people have been maintaining this blockchain for a very long time now. Now you might be saying people, what do you mean by people? I mean the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin network is made up of people who use Bitcoins. Anyone can become a part of the Bitcoin network and contribute in maintaining the public ledger. Now, more on that a little later. We are getting to it. Right now, we are just building the basics. Now, so far we have discussed a lot of basic aspects about Bitcoin. Now it is the right time to know the history of Bitcoin, to know where it came from, so that later on we can understand how it developed into this huge popular cryptocurrency that it is right now. You see, what happened was in November 1st, 2008, a man named Satoshi Nakamoto. Now look, this guy named Satoshi Nakamoto, actually there was a profile on a forum where a lot of people discussed how to create a cryptocurrency, how we can actually create a decentralized cryptocurrency. So on that forum, a lot of people used to post their ideas. One day, a guy with the profile username Satoshi Nakamoto, he posted the design for a new digital currency that he called Bitcoin. It was a very good plan. He described everything in detail. He gave the idea of blockchain technology. He also told people how we can actually create a decentralized cryptocurrency, and people really liked it. But the thing is, no one really knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is, because he was active on that forum from 2008 to 2009, or maybe the beginning of 2010. After that, for some odd reason, he disappeared. And people have absolutely no idea where he came from, who he was till this day. However, a lot of people around the world have claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto, but they don't really have the adequate proof to actually prove that they really are the father of Bitcoin. But if you are ever asked who is known as the father of Bitcoin, your answer will be Satoshi Nakamoto, although we don't really know his real identity. We don't even know whether he was Japanese or not. So anyway, the idea of digital money, convenient and untraceable, liberated from the oversight of governments, banks, had been a hot topic since the birth of internet. You see, since the birth of internet, at least since internet was easily accessible in the developed countries, a lot of people really liked the idea of a currency that is detached from the government, because they did not like the government meddling in currency and how governments tend to lead currency towards hyperinflation and other problems due to corruption or other bad practices. So this idea was always there. Satoshi Nakamoto basically took this idea and gave it a form. Now, before Satoshi Nakamoto presented the idea of Bitcoin, one of the core challenges of designing a digital currency, because even before Bitcoin, some people tried to make a digital currency, a cryptocurrency, but there was always a problem of double spending, because a digital currency is basically what? It is made of data, right? And if a person is proficient in manipulating a digital currency, he knows how to sort of copy a code, and he knows his way around these things. He can easily spend one coin two times, right? So that is a big problem. So this problem is known as a double spending problem, because since a digital currency is made up of data, data can be copied, and of course once a currency is being spent two times, like a coin is being spent two times, whereas it is meant to be spent only once, then of course it will lead to a lot of trouble and the currency will not succeed. So there was this problem. Secondly, the conventional answer to the double spending problem was to create a gigantic ledger of all the transactions so that no one can do any sort of fraud. However, the question was, who will control this ledger? How will it be administered? Who will contribute to the maintenance of this ledger? So some people said we will have a third party institute who will maintain this ledger, but people did not like this idea, because in this way or that way you are pretty much leading the people towards centralized currency again, right? Because in order to be decentralized, you need to give all the people the power, right? If you are giving just some institute or a person all the power to record all the transactions and such, then it is not exactly centralization of power. There is always a chance of corruption. Now here is where Satoshi Nakamoto's idea was path breaking. So Nakamoto presented the idea that we should make the ledger public and anyone can contribute to the ledger, and they can help in the maintenance of that ledger so that it becomes a genuinely decentralized currency. And of course the blockchain technique will be used. Everyone will help in recording all the transactions on the blocks, and eventually we will have a blockchain. All right, so people said, okay, that sounds feasible, perhaps we can do that. But again, there is a huge question: who will power this ledger? How will this ledger function every single day? Because it will require a lot of power, a lot of CPUs to actually power this sort of huge program. So over here Nakamoto said, again, since it is a decentralized currency system, then the people will devote their CPU power to running a special piece of software, and they would be called miners, and would form a network to maintain the blockchain collectively. So basically Nakamoto said that people will help in contributing towards this ledger, and they will also power it with their own CPUs. Now you might be asking, but why would they help in the contribution of this ledger? What will they gain from, and why are they called miners? All these questions will be answered in the next slide. Now what exactly is mining? Now as I told you, Nakamoto presented the idea of a public ledger based on the blockchain technique. Now of course such a huge public ledger that records every transaction that is being made by using a Bitcoin requires a lot of power, right? So he said that people will give the power. So again the question is, what will people get by providing the ledger all this power to function? Now first of all, you need to understand that in order to make sure that the ledger is functioning, Bitcoin requires very powerful CPU, central processing units, that solve very complex mathematical problems and help build an algorithm for the ledger so that it can make quick decisions about transactions. Now you might be asking, what kind of decisions does the ledger have to make? Now for example, I have 100 Bitcoins. I decide to pay 2 people 100 Bitcoins. Now again, I had just 100 Bitcoins, but I just sent a message to the Bitcoin network that I have paid 2 people, 2 separate people Bitcoins. Now the problem with the message is that it records the account number and the amount of Bitcoins that are being sent, but it does not record the time. So when both the messages will reach the Bitcoin network will have to decide which transaction will be featured in the ledger, because of course I just have 100 Bitcoins in my account, right? So I'm giving 100 Bitcoins to this guy as well and this guy as well. So only one of these guys will get 100 Bitcoins. So this decision will have to be made by the ledger. Now this is just an example of why does the ledger require so much contribution from so many CPUs, because it has to make a lot of important decisions. Now this is just a small example of that. So what a lot of people have done is that they have created a career out of Bitcoin mining. They say that, all right, the ledger requires contribution and we can actually do that. So what they have done is they have created these monster CPUs with 5 or 6 GPUs, powerful graphics card, powerful processors. Because now for example, I am a very average guy. I use a very basic CPU with i5 processor. I don't really have a decent graphics card. So if I start Bitcoin mining right now, and if I make my CPU solve very complex mathematical problems in order to help the Bitcoin ledger, I won't be able to contribute all that much. And since I will not be contributing all that much, I will not receive a lot of Bitcoins in reward. To give you an example, if I keep my PC on 24/7 and keep on mining, if my PC is continuously solving all those complex problems for the Bitcoin ledger, in the end, I will get around 100 to 200 rupees, perhaps not even that much, in a month, not even in one day, in a month. So you can imagine that it is a very bad idea for someone who doesn't really have a very powerful CPU to actually get into this. So, but still, that does not hinder people from participating in this whole process. What a lot of people do is they create very powerful CPUs and they fill entire halls with these CPUs. Now, why are they doing this? Because if they keep helping the ledger to function properly, they will be rewarded with bitcoins. Now you might be saying, why are they being rewarded with bitcoins? Because this is the function. Have you ever asked, why are so many notes being printed? Why is there such so much influx of currency suddenly? So this is the system. This is how it functions. This is how it is designed. This is how the rewards are given and how people contribute. This is like a cycle, and a lot of people believe that it is perfectly built, and this is one of the reasons why Bitcoin has been so successful, because people contribute, people get rewards, they keep on contributing, the ledger is maintained, Bitcoin's value keeps increasing. And of course, right now you know that as I record this video, one Bitcoin is around $2,000. So basically, the people who mine for Bitcoins and are helping this ledger to just operate properly, they are part of the Bitcoin network. Alright, so they are the people who maintain this ledger, and I told you how they do this, and I also told you that what they get from it. Now, one question that can be asked is, how do people get Bitcoins? Suppose if you want Bitcoins, how can you get them? Well, first of all, you can buy Bitcoins through any online website. There are a lot of online websites right now. They sell Bitcoins for real money. When I say real money, I mean the currencies that people usually use, like dollars, rupees, whatever you have. Right now, I think the Bitcoin price is somewhere between $1,900 to $2,000. It keeps on fluctuating. So whatever the price is right now, if you want to buy Bitcoins, you can just quote the exchange rate and of course exchange it with your current currency. Other than that, you can also sell things online and get people pay you with Bitcoins. For example, if I am very good at graphics designing or something like that, if I have a talent, then instead of selling my services for dollars or rupees, I can directly sell it for Bitcoins if I believe that the Bitcoin will keep on appreciating and I will actually end up gaining. So this is one option as well. Alright, you can actually sell your goods and services for Bitcoins. Finally, as I told you, you can start mining for Bitcoins by helping the ledger, and of course create a very powerful CPU, actually not just one, create 5 or 6 dozens, and keep on mining and you will be rewarded with Bitcoins. But of course you will need a huge initial investment. Now, one question that can be asked is, why are Bitcoins valuable? Well, this is a very good question, but it has a very simple answer. Bitcoin is valuable because people believe that it has value and they are willing to exchange goods and services for them, even cash. Now, you might be asking, alright, then is this the first time that something like this is happening? Then I would say no. If I ask, what value do diamonds have? Why are diamonds so valuable? Can we actually use them for something instead of just throwing them at something or someone? No, it just has value because people agree that it has value and it can be used for exchange. Now, for example, the ancient Aztec civilization, I think it was in South America. So the ancient Aztecs used cocoa beans. Cocoa beans are right now used to make chocolates. So in those early times, thousands of years ago, the Aztec civilization used cocoa beans as money. So anything can be used for exchange if people believe that it has value and are willing to exchange goods and services for it. Another question that can be asked is, why did Bitcoin prices rose by 60% recently? Well, there are a number of reasons behind it. First of all, Japan, which is a very powerful economy, Japan decided to pass a law that will accept Bitcoin as a legal payment method. So this was humongous. This was a huge development, a huge shot in the arm for Bitcoin, and overall, I think as Japan has did it, we will see more and more countries legalize Bitcoin. Even though so far India's RBI has not said anything positive about Bitcoin, instead it has actually cautioned people about Bitcoin. Other than that, Russia is also reportedly looking ways to regulate Bitcoin. So these two economies are quite huge, even though countries like India are still a bit skeptical about Bitcoin and its future. But since Japan is willing to accept Bitcoin, of course, a lot of investors were very motivated by this development, and they started investing in Bitcoin. And of course, like any other currency, as people started buying it, its demand increased, its value also increased. Okay, so of course, now we can also say that since Japan has passed that law to accept Bitcoin as a legal payment method, Japan is also now the largest Bitcoin market in the world. Another very important question is that is Bitcoin really anonymous? This question is especially quite significant because of the recent ransomware attacks, where, as I told you earlier, the hackers, they decided to encrypt all the data in lakhs of PCs around the world, and they asked for ransom for decrypting the data. So we can say that since the ransomware hackers have not been caught and they were only accepting Bitcoin for the ransom, so can we say that Bitcoin is really anonymous? Well, to a certain point, yes. Not a lot of information about the account owners can be obtained from the public ledger. Even though it is public, it is basically used to check whether the transaction took place or not. It's not really meant to give you the idea or information about the people who made the transaction. However, if the ransomware hackers decide to encash their bitcoins and convert them into other currencies, then various police agencies like Interpol or other investigating agencies, then they might be able to trace them and the hackers might get in trouble. But but until they keep all their bitcoins in their Bitcoin account and don't touch them, we can do very little to actually trace them down. It is virtually impossible to trace them down. Now let's have a look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of Bitcoin. We have already discussed all these points, so I'm just summarizing them. With Bitcoin, it is very possible to send money to get money anywhere in the world, and the fee is very less compared to all the other services. Other than that, you are in control of your money. No government can actually do much. For example, demonetization happened in India because the government was very much in control of the currency. No such thing can happen to Bitcoin. Of course, it can lose its value. That could happen, but other than that, nothing like demonetization can happen with Bitcoin. Finally, with blockchain, all finalized transactions are available for everyone to see. As I mentioned, the public ledger is very much everyone to see, and the personal information is hidden because we don't want everyone to know who is giving someone money. That will be very inconvenient. So basically, you can just see the transactions over there to make sure that the transaction has been made and the transaction is secure. Now, what are the disadvantages of Bitcoin? Well, first of all, not a lot of people know about it. So even if you have a lot of Bitcoins, you can't really purchase a lot of things with it, right? Because of course, in countries like India, you will hardly find any shop that will accept Bitcoin. So that is a huge drawback. Secondly, Bitcoin has volatility. About 2 or 3 years ago, it was crashing. People stopped believing in Bitcoin. People thought it was a Ponzi scheme, and eventually it will just fade away. But right now it is going sky high with around, I think, $2,000 for a single Bitcoin. So it has very high volatility, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of economists don't really like it. And moreover, there can't be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So of course the demand is increasing every single day, and maybe we might see some very strange things happen with Bitcoin's value. And of course, the 21 million Bitcoin rule was made by Nakamoto. These were some of the initial rules that were laid down for Bitcoin. And finally, Bitcoin is still in its infancy stage with complete features that are in development. So we might see more developed, more advanced versions of Bitcoins in the near future that will help them become more easy to understand. First of all, not a lot of people actually understand Bitcoin in the first place. I hope a lot of you will actually understand how Bitcoin actually works after watching this video. But this is one of the big problems with Bitcoin, that it is still very much in the infancy stage. We are yet to see how this cryptocurrency actually develops later on. And this is also the end of the video. I made this video especially for our viewers from Northeast and South India. So do make sure to like this video. It motivates me, because usually the Hindi videos, they get all the views and the English videos hardly get any views. So I don't really feel all that motivated to make these videos. But if you do appreciate my effort, then of course it will encourage me to keep making all the videos in English as well. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a great day.